All right, well, I saw Gary's has made some very civil videos to Anakanavad on Nietzsche and just in general. I took notes on his latest one. I took notes on my Misery-Knees questionable video. I was thinking of making that response, but you know what? I only have a little while, and I think I'd be better served to start book 2 of Beyond Good and Evil, Prelude to a Philosophy of the Future, by Freddie Nugi, and translated by Walter Kaufman. And it's the beginning of book 2, starting with aphorism 24. Exciting. Part 2. The Free Spirit. Yeah. All right. Aphorism 24. O sancta simplicitas. O holy simplicity. In what strange simplification and falsification man lives. One can never cease wondering once one has acquired eyes for this marvel. How we have made everything around us clear and free and easy and simple. How we have been able to give our senses a passport to everything superficial, our thoughts a divine desire for wanton leaps and wrong inferences. How from the beginning we have contrived to retain our ignorance in order to enjoy an almost inconceivable freedom, lack of scruple and caution, hardiness and gaiety of life, in order to enjoy life. And only on this now solid granite foundation of ignorance could knowledge rise so far. The will to knowledge on the foundation of a far more powerful will, the will to ignorance, to the uncertain, to the untrue, not as its opposite, but as its refinement. Okay, so what I see there when we're talking about Nietzsche and his rotting corpse of supporting Nazis, even if he wasn't one, still it's easy to use for that purpose. Well, because of the way you read it, as far as I'm concerned. He's saying people lack scruples and caution. They lack hardiness. They lack gaiety of life. And the irony is they do all of that in order to enjoy life. How is that possible? Because enjoyment of life is not having sugar, it's feeling free. Feeling free is the struggle of domination. So they do these odd and even counterproductive things because they're stuck in this expression of wills to their utmost, whether they wanted it or realize it or not. So even if language here as elsewhere will not get over its awkwardness and will continue to talk of opposites where there are only degrees and many subtleties of gradation, even if the inveterate tartuffery of morals, which now belongs to our unconquerable flesh and blood, infects the words even of those of us who know better, here and there we understand it and laugh at the way in which precisely science at its best seeks to keep us in this simplified, thoroughly artificial, suitably constructed, and suitably falsified world. At the way in which, willy-nilly, it loves error, because being alive, it loves life, and life involves error, and involves ignoring details. This kind of thing is not an advocacy of ignoring details, I don't think, but then again, it wouldn't matter if it was. It's a prelude to a philosophy of the future. Nietzsche says it's that way. This is as far as I got, right? So, I mean, he's talking about, see, things, when people say it's inconsistent, well, he makes assumptions. He doesn't, when he's saying something is for real, he doesn't go, it's for real, you should believe me. He usually makes those assumptions implicit in auxiliary statements. And if you look at such statements, he's consistent which ones he uses. Okay, so this is important, that morality now belongs to our unconquerable, quote-unquote, flesh and blood. Okay, this is what Lakoff and I would, too, put as an embodied mind perspective. Morality is something the brain does, creates, whatever it is, whether it's a philosophy, rules, whatever, whether it's deduction from the material reality even. If it were to be deduced from the granite and the forest, it still would be in the domain of our flesh and blood. Us as bodies, the body and mind, the embodied mind, having to look at humans as living creatures, and philosophy as an aspect of life, not some aspect of some formless void with all the forms that are formed in, Platonic idealism where the body's ignored. That's impossible. Okay. And I'll do 25 as well. After such a cheerful commencement, a serious word would like to be heard. It appeals to the most serious. Take care, philosophers and friends of knowledge, and beware of martyrdom. Hello? Beware of martyrdom. That glorious pinnacle to which you would only hope to have strength to wear, if you do have the strength. Beware of suffering for the truth's sake, even of defending yourselves. It spoils all the innocence and fine neutrality of your conscience. It makes you headstrong against objections and red rags. It stupefies, animalizes, brutalizes when in the struggle with danger, slander, suspicion, expulsion, and even worse consequences of hostility, you have to pose as protectors of truth upon earth, as though the truth were such an innocuous and incompetent creature as to require protectors. Right? So this goes to your socially destructive, might as well be nihilist ideas about Nietzsche. Not that it matters, because nobody should have Nietzsche's philosophy, except for Nietzsche. He's saying, beware being a martyr, because it stupefies, animalizes, and brutalizes when in the struggle with danger. This is like, don't become a monster when you fight monsters. You see, implicit, 2 levels down in the language, is both that don't be a martyr is at a level 1. Down here, a couple levels, it's talking about don't do it because it stupefies, animalizes, and brutalizes, which are bad things. Nietzsche is against the stupid, brutal animal nature of humans. Against the, the Uberman we talk about, what is it? It's just the idea that man is going to be overcome. Like, man is to the ape, that is what ape is to the next man. Homo nextian. What will that guy think? What kind of colors will he like when he paints pictures? That's not the point. It's evolutionary. It's an evolutionary point. This was formative in my thinking, because I did always often think, well, I got to protect the truth. And then I realized, you know what, that's not really true. The truth is a protector of me. That's what I want to do. I want to get in a position where the truth protects me. It's relaxing on the long road towards more truth. To realize truth is undeniable in the sense that people still deny it, and it still remains and persists. And you of all people, unites of the most sorrowful countenance. Hi, Gary. Dear loafers and cobweb spinners of the spirit. Hi, my misery me. After all, you know well enough that it cannot be of any consequence if you of all people are proved right. Modern mystic. You of all people know well that it cannot be of any consequence if you of all people are proved right. My Misery and Me actually did get Nietzsche really well when he was saying, well, Nietzsche's kind of saying, yeah, it is all fucked up, but let's do it anyway. Why? Because we can. Phoenix Rising, whatever. He's stronger than the pessimism. But the pessimism's more true. Yeah, well, that should make it more fun. My Misery and Me kind of got that part right, but then you didn't see how great that is. That's the part. I don't know. You know that no philosopher so far has been proved right, and that there might be a more laudable truthfulness in every little question mark that you place after your special words and favorite doctrines, and occasionally after yourselves, than in all the solemn gestures and trumps before accusers and law courts. Rather, go away, flee into concealment, have your mass and subtlety, that you may be mistaken for what you are not, or feared a little. And don't forget the garden with the golden trellis work. Too poetic, huh? He mentions Epicurus. Epicurus is that solemn little god of the garden. And have people around you who are as a garden, or as music on the waters in the evening, when the day is turning into memories. That's actually pretty literally interpretable, even though it's a bit poetically put. Choose the good solitude, the free, playful, light solitude that gives you, too, the right to remain good in some sense, as opposed to, like, the Unabomber solitude. How poisonous, how crafty, how bad does every long war make one that cannot be waged openly by means of force? How personal does a long fear make one? A long watching of enemies, of possible enemies. Think of your tactics' effects on you, not just on their enemies. These outcasts of society, these long-pursued, wickedly persecuted ones, also compulsory recluses, the Spinozas or the Giordano Brunos, always become, in the end, even under the most spiritual masquerade, and perhaps without being themselves aware of it, sophisticated vengeance seekers and poison brewers. Let someone lay bare the foundation of Spinoza's ethics and theology, in parentheses. Not to speak of the stupidity of moral indignation. That doesn't mean you're not angry or willing to attack a moral outrage. But then sitting on moral indignation is not the same as doing something about a moral outrage. And in fact, often leads to, oh, I did my bit, I was indignant, and no actions of any consequence. That's my view. So not to speak of the stupidity of moral indignation, which is the unfailing sign in the philosopher that his philosophical sense of humor has left him. I think the difficult thing there is I totally believe that. I try to stay entirely away from moral indignation, but you can't stay away from expressing a sense of offense. You can't be like, oh, I don't allow myself to take offense. And that has to be kept as a fine line between that and indignation. Indignant, like something else should have happened. Is to see a moral outrage is an outrage. Moral indignation is like an expectation on nature that it should have been a different way, and you're just indignant like it should have worked out right on its own. Moral outrage is like, holy shit, we're going to make this work out. It's a huge difference. Moral indignation, which is the unfailing sign in a philosopher that his philosophical sense of humor has left him. Excuse me. The martyrdom of the philosopher, his sacrifice for the sake of truth, forces into the light whatever of the agitator and actor lurks in him. And if one has so far contemplated him only with artistic curiosity, with regard to many a philosopher, it is easy to understand the dangerous desire to see him also in his degeneration. Degenerated into a martyr, into a stage and a platform baller. Only that it is necessary with such a desire to be clear what spectacle one will see in any case. Merely a satire play, merely an epilogue farce, merely the continued proof that the long real tragedy is at an end, assuming that every philosophy was, in its genesis, a long tragedy.